What was Epstein? It's a question politicians, journalists, and investigators have circled for years, and yet somehow no one seems to be able to get an answer. At least a convincing one. And partly, it's because you look at the deals he received, the intelligence services that were connected to him, the privileges, the protection, the money. The story changes. It stops looking like a biography of a billionaire and starts looking like something else entirely. And to understand what Epstein actually was, you just have to listen to the people he spoke to. And for our first witness statement, we have to go back to the 1970s, where Epstein worked at Towers Financial Corporation, and he became entangled in one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. And it was Stephen Hoffenberg himself who claimed that Epstein worked for the Department of Justice.
I stood up, pled guilty, and accepted the responsibility. My sentence was for 20 years in federal prison, and I didn't turn evidence against him because Jeffrey Epstein told me he was a cooperating witness for the United States Department of Justice in the past, and he had traction with them.
If that's the beginning point, and you start to stack that claim against the rest of his life, a horrible and disturbing pattern begins to emerge. We fast forward to the 1990s, and Epstein has obviously built a bigger empire, and people have repeatedly tried to report him.
I got back to New York City. I told the NYPD everything that had happened. I told them I'd been assaulted, and they said, it's just not in our jurisdiction. You know, like, we have nothing to do with this. These things happen in Ohio, New Mexico. You're gonna have to call the FBI.
You're listening to Maria Farmer, who was assaulted by Epstein and Maxwell.
When I called the FBI, I laid it out very specifically. I said, I'm reporting these people, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. I told them everything. And I could tell that he believed me. So I really had believed that he was going to take care of this. And then we just actually did not hear back. In 1996, following the assault by Jeffrey and Ghislaine, I came back to New York, and then I found out that they knew that I'd reported them to the FBI.
And now we're seeing a pattern to begin to emerge. We've got claims of connections to the DOJ and now to the FBI. Who in the FBI is contacting Epstein and Maxwell and warning them?
Ghislaine called and said she was going to burn all my art and burn my career and destroy it. She told me I needed to watch my back, that I know you like to go running on the West Side Highway, and that's not going to be a safe place for you anymore because there are a lot of ways to die on the West Side Highway.
Now we have witnesses saying that the DOJ are involved, and so are the FBI. And it doesn't end there, because Alicia Arden also reported Epstein and Maxwell to the police in Santa Monica, and nothing happened.
I drove to the Santa Monica Police Department to file a police report. I don't remember him ever being investigated. No one called me. He didn't get in trouble over it. It was like nothing really ever happened.
However, in 2005, things come to a head for Epstein, and the reporting is finally getting through. A parent concerned calls up Palm Beach Police Department in Florida.
Hello? Hi, how are you? I'm good. I'm returning your call. I apologize. I don't know exactly what for. It's okay. It was an incident that occurred maybe like three and a half weeks ago with one of my stepdaughters.
When the police raid the house, it appears that Epstein has been tipped off. Again, inside knowledge, because all the computing equipment and video footage is missing. The chief of police at Palm Beach also made very serious allegations against the FBI.
Suddenly, when we'd call the FBI agents, they would tell us they were forbidden to talk with any representative of the Palm Beach Police Department about the case. It's the only time that ever happened in my 30 years as a law enforcement officer.
Yet despite 20 to 34 underage victims, the Attorney General for Florida, Alex Acosta, offers one of the nicest deals possible. Epstein is given an 18-month jail sentence, but only serves 13. He's allowed 12 to 16 hours per day, 6 days a week on work release. So that's not inside the prison, effectively only sleeping there at night. He's also given a secret non-prosecution agreement. That means he gains immunity from all federal sex trafficking and underage charges in the Southern District of Florida, and that included several co-conspirators. And finally, Acosta violated the Crime Victims' Right Act. Victims were deliberately kept in the dark until after the plea deal had been signed.
It was outrageous. That's when we learned for the first time there's not a deal about to happen. A deal actually already happened. It's already done. The case is over. And my clients are going, how is the case over when it hasn't started? This doesn't make any sense to me. I told him what doesn't make sense to you right now also doesn't make sense to me.
Things only get weirder because in 2019, the Daily Beast releases an article where they interviewed Acosta, or at least they claim to, and it basically says, according to Acosta, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. And all sorts starts to unfold in 2019. For a start off, Alexander Acosta has been hired by Trump and then fired by Trump. And the axing of Acosta was all down to the fact that revelations came out about Epstein, but Trump still defended him.
He's a tremendous talent. He's a Hispanic man. He went to Harvard, a great student. And in so many ways, I just hate what he's saying now because we're going to miss him.
Jeffrey Epstein has been arrested on new sex trafficking charges.
However, within the year, Epstein is dead. And even before his death, Epstein had been found injured in his cell and he claimed his cellmate tried to kill him. His cellmate? This guy, a former police officer. Nicholas Tartaglione, a former police officer convicted of quadruple murder. Why was a high-profile prisoner paired with a convicted murderer? Tartaglione was cleared and removed from the cell. Epstein was placed on suicide watch. On July 24th, Epstein was taken off suicide watch. He adamantly denied to his lawyers of being suicidal, yet by August 10th, he was dead. And the failures are almost unbelievable. Cameras outside his cell were turned off or didn't work, guards assigned to check on him were asleep, logs documenting checks were falsified, and at 10:35, when all inmates were meant to be in their cells, someone is seen in an orange jumpsuit climbing up to the tier that Epstein's on, and they're unaccounted for. Evidence vanished, photographs weren't taken properly, evidence was mishandled, the body was moved, they even cable tied his hands even though he was dead, and they were meant to do it with handcuffs. They left him even though he was just off suicide watch with a sleep machine, a sleep apnea device, which had long electrical cords. So you have to ask yourself, what on earth was going on inside that jail? It's hard to believe that this is all just incompetence. Considering the links I've already built at the beginning of this video, it's hard not to believe that this wasn't just provision to someone who was suicidal. And the weirdness continued because after his death, it looked as if Team Trump, who were running to get into the White House again, were promising to release everything related to Epstein from 2023 to 2025.
Just scale pederast in human history.
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right?
Declassify the 9/11 files.
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
Be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
In this case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
And yet, when Trump is finally in office, he gaslights the country and starts questioning why anyone is asking about this. It's a full U-turn on policy and promises.
You're still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network, on Fox News.
Got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yep.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to. And
I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information, and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself. Do you think, let's play out the logical conclusion of this, do you think that myself, Bongino, and others would participate in hiding information about Epstein's grotesque activities? Or do you think we would also participate in not prosecuting people we had evidence to prosecute people on?
As we continue down this rabbit hole, we have to go all the way back to 2020, where Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested in her home. She's convicted by 2022, and things continue to get wild, where Donald Trump said this about Maxwell's incarceration.
I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach, but I wish her well.
Skip to 2025, and the Trump madness continued by him suggesting that this entire thing was a Democratic hoax and that they'd all gone crazy. But it doesn't end there, because the deputy head of the Department of Justice met personally with Maxwell and just so happened to be a former attorney to Donald Trump. Maxwell was immediately sent to a minimum security prison. That's not a coincidence, that's a deal. So if you look back all the way to the 1980s to the modern era, agencies at the federal level are backing off, investigations seem to collapse, every system seems to break around him. That's not coincidence, that's protection. And that isn't just American. The UK refused to investigate despite British victims and a British perpetrator.
And we have concluded that there is no investigation for us to open, and we haven't.
There's even evidence that the palace covered this up.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story.
So if we go back to the question, what was Epstein? Having looked at this timeline of events, we can see allegations of an informant, and that there's repeated evidence that he was protected. We have a death that makes no sense, and we have a co-conspirator who received a sentence reduction so strange it looks like a negotiation, not justice. That alone is alarming, but it still doesn't answer the real question, because protection is not the what. Protection tells you something else exists behind the protection. And to figure that out, we have to look at how he interacts with someone. Someone who used him, someone who relied on him, someone powerful enough that Epstein's value becomes obvious. Ehud Barak. And that is where the why finally becomes the what. Ehud Barak is a former Israeli Prime Minister and a former head of Israeli military intelligence, a man raised in the world of covert operations. So why? Why is he emailing Jeffrey Epstein like his staff? Recently, over 100,000 private emails from Ehud Barak's private account leaked online. And the emails show there was a joint relationship between Barak, Jeffrey Epstein, and Prince Andrew. From the emails we can see that Epstein was arranging his travel, arranging meetings, securing private safe apartments in New York, advising on media exposure, and advising on legal vulnerability. And it wasn't just Barak. Yoni Koren, Barak's aide and a Mossad veteran, lived at Epstein's townhouse, not visiting. He lived there. Epstein even handled wire transfers for Koren. This is not social, this is operational. But it goes deeper, because according to these emails, there's gun running, surveillance, and intelligence tech, all available through Epstein. Epstein was photographed with arms dealers, he invested in surveillance startups and tech firms, he brokered meetings between tech billionaires and Barak, including Peter Thiel. And within 4 years, around 2018, $50 million is invested into Barak's company by Peter Thiel. This is not networking, this is what is known as brokering. Epstein was a bridge between intelligence veterans, Israeli political figures, Silicon Valley billionaires, surveillance tech companies, investors, and defense strategists. And Barak knew exactly what he was doing, because Barak's aides emailed him Virginia Giuffre articles as early as 2011, but he kept meeting Epstein anyway. He was even photographed in 2016 entering Epstein's New York home. His excuse? It was cold. But the other thing to point out here is, why is he staying at Epstein's? Has he not got the money to go and stay at the Four Seasons or the Hilton in New York? But you might go, X. That's only one example. Maybe he was only working with one group. Well, we've seen clear evidence of protection coming from the federal government in the United States. But there's even more. We have evidence that Epstein was also advising Steve Bannon, handling his travel, coaching him on avoiding disclosure laws. But for a full breakdown, you'll have to watch my video, link at the end of this video. And of course, we also know this is not the only time the Americans have also covered up for illicit activities. There was Barry Seal, the drug trafficker, who was working with and used by the CIA. And there's Whitey Bulger, a known serial killer, maniac, gangster, who was an FBI informant, and therefore the FBI allowed him to operate, killing many across the United States. Governments don't protect good people, they protect useful people. And Epstein bent more laws than either of those two. And when you look where he operated, the US, the UK, Israel, Russia, Europe, Silicon Valley, arms networks, surveillance companies, political movements, this was not a footprint of a man who was owned by one agency. This was a private intelligence broker. Someone who likely started working for the Department of Justice and then expanded onto the international scene. And he became so useful, Epstein was protected more aggressively and consistently than almost any criminal in American history. That leaves us with up to 7 questions. Who was instructing everyone to back off? Who had the authority to coordinate this protection? What did Epstein have on them? And who else is on that list? Who decided he was more dangerous alive than dead? Where did all his money come from? And what did all these agencies and powerful people know about Epstein and children? And for question 6, the evidence seems to be pointing that these agencies and powerful people connected to Epstein knew exactly what he was doing, and they didn't care because he was so useful. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this video interesting, maybe even enjoyed it, you might like my book, Manufactured Fear, available on Amazon. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon YouTube subscribers. You do keep this channel going and growing. If you'd like to become one, there's a link in the description. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Bye for now.